Every single person worries about basic training. What is that first week going to look like? How hard is it going to be? What PT am I going to do? Will I get shouted at? When am I going to fire a rifle? The list is never ending. The truth is, week one is nerve-wracking, but it's not what you think. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what happens step by step in that first week. I'll give you the boring stuff, the fun stuff, the hard stuff, but most importantly, I'll give you my top tips to make sure that you get off to the best possible start. Let's get into the video. Okay guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video where we are going to be breaking down exactly what happens in that first week of basic training. I have lost count for exactly how many times I get asked what actually happens in that first week. The truth is, it is definitely not what you think. I have been to Sandhurst myself. I've also been an instructor at a basic training establishment, and I can tell you it is not what you think. And I am a big believer that knowledge dispels fear. So if you can prepare as best as you can and you know what's coming up, you're likely going to have a better time on the course and get off to a better start. Yes, basic training is going to be hard, but it is far from impossible. So should you be nervous? Yes, a little bit. You should also be excited, but there are certain things that you should know as well for what happens in that first week. So without further ado, let's get into the first point. Number one, let's start with when you actually arrive. Day zero is essentially when you arrive. You might get the train, you might get dropped off by your parents or loved ones, but once you arrive, you are then into the military's hands and you aren't getting shouted at from day one. I actually remember a colour sergeant greeting me at Sandhurst as I was driving in through the gates ready to park my car on Old College Parade Square. And I remember him sort of grinning at me, went, "Welcome to Sandhurst." And it was kind of like a, yeah, welcome, but this is going to be a bit of a tough year. But on day zero, when you actually arrive, you basically just arrive in a suit with an ironing board. They call it Ironing Board Sunday for a reason. And then you go and find your accommodation. That's the first part that happens. You go find out what platoon you're in, and then you go and find your accommodation. I get a lot of questions about should you arrive in a suit? And my answer is yes. I think you should probably have a suit anyway. I understand that sometimes they're not cheap, but it's a good purchase if you have the money. And it also just shows that you are taking the course seriously, that you're turning up dressed to impress, looking the part. I definitely encourage you to take an ironing board as well. You will do a ton of ironing that we'll get into in a minute. So actually having your own ironing board instead of always having to wait for someone else to be done and use theirs will help you a lot because you're going to spend a lot of time ironing. That's the second part, is once you've arrived, you'll then do your oath of allegiance. And it's essentially where you pledge your allegiance to king and country. Queen and country when I went through, now king and country, obviously. Some questions I get on the oath of allegiance are, do you have to be religious, blah, 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 all that type of stuff. If you are religious, you do a religious one. If you aren't religious, you do a non-religious one. It's pretty simple. They say some words, you repeat them. But I do think that you shouldn't take this lightly because you are pledging your allegiance. You are, to serve whoever is governing the country, whoever is in command of the country, and to do, to follow orders. Essentially, that is what you're doing. Okay, what happens next is probably an introduction to marching. You're going to do a lot of this as you go through, but at the start, you're definitely going to be pretty crap at it. Everyone is. They will form you up into a group and into 3 ranks is what the term is. And it's just an easier way to get you in and around camp. At a basic training establishment, you will be marching pretty much everywhere. At Sandhurst, you will march everywhere unless you're running. You won't just be walking around camp. You have to march. And the same goes at a phase 1 training establishment. You will be marched around camp by a instructor, so by one of the corporals, and if it's at Sandhurst, you'll be marched around by one of the colour sergeants. They will march you to and from. That's probably one of the things that you feel like your freedom has been taken away completely at the start, is you no longer just cut around by yourself. You kind of have to request permission and you'll be marched around, but it's pretty straightforward. Okay, number 4 is medicals. Okay, if you're going through the process now, you will have already done a ton of medicals, I'm sure. That would be before you do your assessment centre, you have to make sure that you have to send off your medical paperwork just in the application process. Then you have to do your in-person medical. And then if you're turning up to Sandhurst especially, then you actually have to go and do another medical before you start Sandhurst. And then once you start Sandhurst in that first week, you'll do more medicals as well. So before they start thrashing you on PT and getting you to do loads of hard stuff, you but first have to be medically checked off. Concurrently to that, you will get your kit issue. Okay, if you are like me and you have never been in the military before, you will get issued so much kit and you won't have a clue what most of it is. Actually checking it off the list, it becomes pretty difficult. I remember being given a Bergen, and I didn't know what a Bergen was, but I definitely didn't know what a yoke was, magazine pouches, all this type of stuff. I didn't know what they looked like and all that, whatever it is. So your kit issue is quite an event because they also give you so much of it. And also what's important is then how to keep it clean, tidy, and ironed most of the time if it needs ironing. Which brings me nicely into the ironing part. Okay, the rumours are true. You will be doing a bunch of ironing, loads of it. And if you are crap at ironing, I've got good news for you. By the end of training, you'll be quite decent at it. You will get shown all of this in basic training, whether that's Sandhurst or if you're joining as a soldier. So it's nothing to overly worry about, but do expect, especially in that first week, to spend a lot of time just ironing kit. You need it ready for your kit inspections, which brings me on to kit inspections. Okay, you absolutely don't need to worry about this too much at the start because they're not expecting a hugely high standard. Okay, they are expecting for you to get it wrong and you need to be pointed out. But when we do kit inspections, especially when I was a DS, we are looking for uniformity across the section or across the platoon. That's the biggest part. That's the most important part. So for that, as I said, your locker needs to be laid out correctly, you need to be folded correctly and stored correctly. There's just a lot of that stuff that goes on, polishing your boots, making your bed, lots of stuff that goes into a kit inspection. You'll be shown how to do it and then you'll be given the time to get it done. You won't really be punished at all if you don't get it right in that first week, but as the course progresses, obviously at that point they'll want to see, for you to pay attention to detail and for you to be picking this up. Number 8, we're going to talk about haircuts. Will you be having your hair cut? Yes. It varies dependent on the person, religious backgrounds, male, female, all that type of stuff. But I'm just going to go general rule of thumb for what I experienced is if you are a male and you aren't religious or you're just not that big into religion, then you are likely going to get your head shaved if you're joining as a soldier. And if you're joining as an officer, I can't remember. Is it like a grade 2? I can't quite remember, but you basically just has a bit of a buzz cut and slightly longer on top. We don't get our heads shaved as officers, so it's not like really, really short buzz cut, but it is shorter than what other people would have. I always have my hair quite short, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But you'll get your hair cut. Again, not something to hugely worry about. I understand if you have certain beliefs that it can be a bit of a nerve-wracking process, but you just speak to your chain of command and most of the time it's absolutely squared away. So don't worry about that too much. And actually, I remember the recruits in my platoon found it quite funny. Buzz cuts suit some people. They certainly don't suit everyone. On to one of the more serious sides then is actually your will. You will write a will in that first week. Okay, you will basically sign to say if something happens, who you want to leave your money to, your possessions to or something. And to be honest with you, one, it's essential. You need to do that. There's a lot of forms that you need to fill out in the start and you'll be pointed in the right direction for insurance and all that type of stuff. So don't worry about that. But the will is actually the bit that is quite hard hitting because especially as a DS, when I was delivering this and getting people to write their own wills and fill in forms or whatever, it's the part where I really want people to pay attention because actually it's one of those areas when you're getting your kit issued and stuff, like it feels real, but it's so low level. It kind of feels like you're in the army, but doesn't feel like you're in the real army. And that's probably because you're not. But when you get your will done, that's the bit where you actually sit up in your seat, pay attention. You're like, okay, there's this serious side of the job. And I do want to be just serious on this point for a minute. There's obviously this really serious side of the job that if you haven't thought that through, I would spend a bit of time thinking it through. Don't want to be all somber in this video because actually starting basic training is an exciting part, of your journey. However, you will have, obviously you're joining the army, right? And there's that risk that we all sign up to at the very start. So yes, you will have to write a will during week 1. And number 10, we're going to be meet the staff. There's a lot of staff. There is a lot of people to meet. That is your platoon staff, so your section commanders, if you're joining as a soldier, or definitely your platoon staff, your colour sergeant, platoon commander, when you get to Sandhurst. And then there's all the company staff, your OC, the major, who is the officer commanding the company, and he'll have his company sergeant major. But there's just a load of personalities that you need to meet, as well as others, and you'll definitely mess it up. You will call them the wrong name. Again, not something to be overly concerned about, but you need to meet them to understand who these people are and also what their role is as well. And the final part of what you'll be up to, and the bit that I should probably warn you about, is early starts and late nights. You will be up at the crack of dawn. Okay, you will be given what we call block jobs. And that is where you will clean the floors, you will scrub the toilets, you will just do anything. You'll do areas clean outside your accommodation, and you'll just do all sorts, right, to make sure that you are working as a team, keeping the area clean and tidy, and that you also have a bit of responsibility. And typically this is where people start to get a little bit jack, shall we say, which basically means a bit selfish. All right, as I said at the start of the video, I just want to run through my top tips for getting off to the best possible start. And number 1, if you've watched my content before, this won't be a shock to you, but it's a bond with your platoon. Whoever it is in your platoon, spend the time getting to know them. Okay, you are going to be working really closely with them. You're going to be living on top of them, and you're going to need their help. Don't just sulk off to your room or sit in the corner on your phone all evening or anything like that, because people get pretty frustrated with it. You've opted into the army, and being part of the army means that you are buying into a new team, a new family. Tip number 2 is don't be jack. Okay, if you need to be up to do your block jobs, whether it's cleaning the accommodation, whatever that is, make sure you're up to do that stuff. People will get really annoyed with you if you constantly don't turn up to clean your kit or whatever it is. Okay, so don't be jack. Offer up your help. You are there to help each other. Tip number 3, it gets better. I got so frustrated with recruits that would come to me in that first week and go, yeah, I've tried the army, it's not for me. This is nothing like the actual army, okay? Basic training isn't really anything like the army. It is a bit of a shock to the system. It might not be as intense at the start or whatever as you want it to be, but it will get better and it will get harder as well. I remember being in Sandhurst in that first week and just thinking, I'm a little bit bored. There's a lot of free time. And then the course just switches like that, okay? And it goes really, really fast paced. It will get better and it will get harder. But also don't judge that first week and pretend that you know what army life is like, because you absolutely don't. Okay, guys, that is it for this week's video. As I said, I get a ton of questions about what happens day 1, week 1, and I thought it was best just to put it in this video. And if you want to, you can go and watch the whole of the Civilian to Soldier series on my channel if you are starting basic training soon. Please do please do leave a comment if you've got any questions, and click subscribe. And you can also click the bell if you want to be notified every time I upload a video. Any questions in the comments, and I'll see you next week with a brand new video in a bit.